This is the briefing video for the 12th of June meeting, 2023. We have our pretty normal opening, to a certain extent, boring business staff with the call to order, invocation of pledge, roll call, approval of the agenda, approval of past meeting minutes, treasurer's report, paying the bills, fire department report, planning commission report, zoning board of appeals report, maintenance and grounds report. That gets us to our first public comment session, and decently small packet. This time 41 pages, decently small agenda. Our first decision item is resolution 2023-24 for the expenditure policy. Few adjustments here. One, it defines promptly, just as in 14 days of getting checks sent in, so we're not holding those for extended periods of time. There's an adjustment just to correlate with the laws for the state anyways, about taxes being under the authority of the treasurer, and then a number of adjustments, which they're in red lettering in here, and you can get these on the website, for making the positions and the operations that can be more flexible, so that when I have to redistribute work and try to get things done, that can happen according to the policies as well. Next, we have the Twin Lake welcome sign. So it's a little more debatable. And this one, I've been looking at the welcome sign for a couple of years since I've been in. And at first, I just had them cut down some of the plants, and that was grow back. At one time, the welcome sign was very well taken care of and well made initially and originally. And I've seen pictures where there were boards that kept up some tiered dirt and flowers planted in there. It was a nice thing. But at some point in the past, obviously, that faded off. And the plants had overgrown it, and it was kind of a mess, and they would block the lights that were set up there, and the plants didn't look very good anyway. So then I just had maintenance rip out the plants, just put some more rock in there, so it's at least got a cleaner look. And then my initial thought was just to patch it up and kind of replace some of the pieces, make it look a little better. Maintenance started pulling and pushing on it, and the wood's not in very good shape, especially the bottom there. So then we inquired last year into maybe doing some people doing partial replacements, just remaking the sign portion, stuff like that. Nothing ever came through from a few different people that we inquired in with. So then we're looking at maybe doing it in-house, maybe going up to the Fab Lab and CNCing something. But we haven't done that. We had contacted sign companies about either having them make just the sign portion, or to, that we could put up like pillars or something. They could make the sign, we could put that in there. What I ended up with was a quote from sign company for just redoing the whole project, and a picture of that is in here. It's approaching 10 grand. It's a little over 9 grand. So a decent amount, which I, in the budget, I was still thinking like, we could, kind of make it a small thing, and I hadn't had quotes at that time. So decently big project, one of those things that it'd be nice to keep up with, to get taken care of, because, instead of letting a bunch of things fall apart. But that's what that is. Next is resolution 2023-23 for ARPA funds, and this specifically has to do with the construction on the building. And so the board approved doing the roof in the AC because they were working on that and doing that first, and we had the numbers. And then that came in about $100,000. But it was $20,000 more to do the complete tear off. But I certainly wanted the complete tear off. Otherwise, we're just kind of repeating the past mistake of just adding layer after layer after layer. And so we got that. And but I would have needed, for pulling on ARPA's funds, which was the original idea. I still want the resolutions done because, it's maybe a little bit overkill on the paperwork, but I think it's probably important and maybe relevant in the future. And that was just nice and explicit and clear. And so for the overall thing, I've taken a guess in the budget moving forward that about $200,000 on this building. So we got about 120 into that. We got another 8, so approaching 10 is how I phrase it in here, but we have another 8 into the architect for the remodel inside. And then initially the remodel numbers came in over 125,000. And we've been able to sit down with the project manager on that and knock off 10 grand. And he's looking at some other cost savings we could potentially do as well. But nevertheless, still it's going to be approaching something closer to 250. And so this is written up like that, along with making the budget adjustment moving forward. Next, we have ordinance 2023-08 for zoning amendments, and there's a few different things in here. There is special event venues, let's see, so temporary special use permits, special events venues, and enforcement process. And so, in like the enforcement process it looks quite a bit different than the format that I had written up in the resolutions, or which ended up in place in the general ordinances. But it's the same process, just formatted a little differently into how the enforcement process was already formatted in the zoning ordinance. So a few different things on that. We've obviously been cranking through quite a few adjustments through the planning commission and zoning. This is a continuation of that. Next, we have the cemetery coordinator. There were a number of different issues there, and Heather was willing to take it over and is working on sorting those out. She's done well at it. So it's already happening. This is just essentially to officially acknowledge, right, that she's the primary point of contact on the cemetery stuff. Next, we have bike trail land. These are discussion items. So bike trail land, there's a friends group that does some things on the bike trail, and we do the cutting on it and filling in some of the cracks and that type of stuff. And they want to put in some repair stations, benches, little information things, stuff like that. And they get some sponsors, they get some grants for those types of things. And one recently had happened they were thinking to put behind Sativa, which is in Muskegon Charter, so below us, but they don't want an expansion like that there. And I believe originally when the bike trail went in, which I have a bunch of documentation on it, but there were more restrictions, especially at that time through the business park. And so at least as that was being debated, so the idea was that nothing was going to go in there like that. On McMillan, just on the south side of McMillan where the bike trail crosses it, there is a parking lot, and that is actually where phase 1 and phase 2 of the trail come together, which are done at slightly different times. And there's a little parking lot there on the north side. So that's on the parking lot is on the south side on the east. On the north side of the trail on the west, there's a triangle piece that's 1 acre. It's a wooded lot. And one of the lines, which there's a map in the back of it if you want to look at it, but there's a long border with the bike trail. And so it's an obvious piece to go with the bike trail. If at any point in the future, someone wants to add a pavilion, if the friends group wants to clear up some of the trees, add a pavilion, something like that, repair station, a spot for people to stop seems reasonable. And it would make sense to get that designated, do that now, either through a resolution or through a deed, so that at some point in the future, I don't particularly plan on doing anything with it, but at some point in the future, it's possible. Otherwise, if that gets sold off to someone, then there's only one other spot where the township owns property that borders the bike trail, and it's a narrow strip that runs between 2 houses, between Whitehall Road and the bike trail. So that seems like it would be an odd spot to use. So it makes sense to do this now. Especially since they won't be able to do stuff in that long strip on the business park and Sativa and Muskegon Charter. There's just areas where it doesn't make sense for them to do anything. And I got that idea from Fruitland. Fruitland designated a few pieces that are next to the bike trail for future stuff that may happen. So, and I wasn't sure if we had any property bordering it, but we do have this one that makes a lot of sense. Next, we have enforcement aid for seniors. Clay, the enforcement officer, had brought this up, and Clay, he works with people. People don't get a warm feeling normally from Clay, right? He's a detective, so all of that type of stuff. But he brought up, some of the blight issues. People complain, he goes out, yes, right, it falls under blight, so they have to clean it up. And some people just won't clean it up, and they just want to go to court, or they're resistant, or they clean it up, and then we mark it off, and then they do the same thing again. The cycle repeats. But some of the people he brought up are, they're older, and it's just, they probably could use some help, or they would have difficulty actually accomplishing it. And so he inquired into the senior millage funds for that, which is reasonable to consider. This year, we've already designated, we did snow plowing in the winter, obviously, and then we designated the rest for Safe Seniors for going after scammers. And so if it was senior millage money, it'd be a next year thing, but it does seem pretty reasonable. in that way, we restricted just to seniors. If we were pulling it out of general funds instead of the senior millage money specifically, then you could open it up to people with disabilities or people with poverty exemptions or something like that. It's easy to see how people would gain that though, so there should be restrictions on it. Maybe just an application that could be approved or denied. Certainly an amount, a limit on how much is spent on a single person, the number of people that were done per year. Various restrictions like that should certainly be put in place if it is done. So just something to consider. That's why I have it in the discussion section, see people's thoughts on it. So that is the meeting on Monday, June 12th. If anyone has any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out. My direct line at the office is area code 231-332-6700 or email supervisor@daltontownship.org. Otherwise, this is Jeff signing off until next time.